welcome to West Country Wanderings and welcome to my 300th video. Can't believe I've made 300 videos for the channel. Welcome to one of my railway series today. I'm doing a railway walk. We're here in the county of Wiltshire. I'm in the town of Chippenham. As you can see, I'm at Chippenham railway station. It's a Sunday, so things are very quiet here. And today we're going to explore the remains of the branch line that once went to Calne, the Wiltshire town of Calne. Now originally it left from this station here, this fantastic station here, and when it was built, and I'll give you more information later in a bit of a quieter area, it had just 2 platforms. And it was opened by the Calne Railway Company, not the GWR, or the GWR later purchased it for reasons I'll explain. At that time, Chippenham railway station only had 2 platforms, and GWR were very unhappy that it had to leave. The little branch line trains down to Calne had to leave from the main line platforms here. Of course, we're on the main line between London Paddington and Bristol Temple Meads here. A bit further along in that direction is the city of Bath, of course. So what we're going to do today is we're going to explore further along this railway line, which follows the river Marden, so it's deep in the valley. So why not join me again here on West Country Wanderings, looking at the branch line that ran to Calne. So our starting point here in Chippenham follows the banks of the River Avon. It doesn't actually follow the original route of the railway. I'll insert a map now because there are no rights of way across the branch line at that point, where we're going to meet up to a footbridge and then join what is now the cycle track down to Calne. It was restored by Sustrans quite a few years ago now, and that is the former railway track there. And once I'm on there, I'll tell you more about the history of this line and we'll see what evidence we've got. If I can, also along our journey today, I'll insert some photographs of what the line looked like when it was open from here, from Chippenham down to Calne. So I'm now in Monkton Park. There's a 9-hole golf course here, just the other side there. There is a place called the 10th hole, which you can get yourself a coffee here. So we're still following along the banks of the River Avon. It is most pleasant, but it's quite busy for filming. There's lots of people, being a Sunday morning, out dog walking, and that's good to see because it's a rare dry day today. So I've dashed out today. It should be dry all day, fingers crossed, to do the walk. But we've got some rain coming up again, unfortunately, so that's why I needed to film this, my 300 video here in Chippenham. But we're going to continue following this. I think there's a wood coming up. I'm not sure if it's on this side of the river or the other side, but we should be able to see that shortly, and then we'll go across the footbridge. We'll be then joining the former track bed of the railway line down to Calne. So we're now leaving the town behind. There is a bit of a floodplain here, and it's good to see that they've planted new trees as well. So you've got the River Avon going in a loop around that way. We're sticking rigidly to the cycle track to aiming for that bridge where we joined the former railway bed of the branch down to Calne. And as I say, when we get onto that, I'll tell you more about the history of this fascinating line. I'll also tell you about the route that it took going through Chippenham. Of course, a lot of that has now been used for housing, you know, the sort of thing, industrial units, but I'll see if I can pick out the route from the OS map too. So this is the bridge behind me here. It's not the original railway bridge, but it uses the abutment of the original Calne railway bridge. It was put in by Sustrans when they opened this as a cycle track between the largest town of Chippenham here in North Wiltshire and the smaller town of Calne. I don't know the year that happened, but Sustrans, if you're not familiar with them, I think their first project was the cycle track between Bristol and Bath, which utilised the old Midland railway line. We've come across that before when I did a video at the Avon Valley Railway. Been there a couple of times, and that sits right on that former railway track heading down in the direction of Bath. Well, that was their first project. This one, I say, I don't know when it was done, but it's delightful. Well, the bridge design isn't particularly delightful, but it is delightful situation here, right next to the River Avon. In actual fact, our railway track doesn't follow the River Avon. There is a tributary of it called the River Marden, and it follows that from here, and we'll be coming across the River Marden as we make our way closer to the town of Calne. Now I have a correction, and I wasn't aware of this at all. So both the book that I'm using today, and I'll tell you more about the book in a minute because it gave me the idea of doing that, following the Lost Railway walks, and the OS Map app have not been updated. According to both of them, this section here from the bridge, which is that side behind the camera at the moment, and I'll show you more of that in a bit, this is the abandoned section. So this is the former track bed here of the branch line towards Calne from Chippenham. So now it looks like this footpath has been completely opened all the way almost to the railway station, although when I was at the railway station I couldn't see any signs for that, I must admit. But yeah, so this is the former track bed, and you can walk all this way, and I think it comes out because it says about the college, and I remember seeing Wiltshire College when I was on the train heading into Chippenham station, so it must come out somewhere in that area if you're familiar with this area at all. So it's great that this section has been completely restored, which means if you want to do this walk instead of coming the way, well, you have a choice. You can come this way by the river, which is very, very pleasant, and through the park. You can also come straight by the college and follow pretty much all of the former railway track from Chippenham heading down towards Calne. So that's really great to say, and well done for Sustrans for completing it and sorting out the rights issues, because I think parts of the gardens are overlapping. So there is a big housing estate here from the town centre which goes right up to the land, so there is access rights issues. That's now been sorted, and former railway track bed now completely reopened. Brilliant. This is quite exciting here because it says reconstructed 1920, and these are the former parapets, well, the coping stones at the top of the embankment restored in 1920, and it's the first bit of evidence of the former railway down to Calne that we've seen so far. But there are been promised some more things to see along the journey. Now you can see from this angle that both the original bridge and this Sustrans bridge, I wasn't given it due credit. As I say, it's not the most aesthetically pleasing design. It is quite an ingenious engineering solution because of the abutments that were left when they decided to reopen this as a cycle track, and it dips in the centre, but you have this curious strange spiral. I'll do a clip of that now. Does anybody know what that's for? I have absolutely no idea. All opinions most welcome in the comments below. So we're going to continue on now to a hamlet called Stanley, where there used to be an aqueduct carrying the Wilts and Berks Canal. In fact, the end of that aqueduct meant the end of the Wilts and Berks. There'll also be other connections to the Wilts and Berks as we continue our journey heading towards the village, or town should I say, of Calne. So I demoted it then, but beautiful birdsong here along the former railway track bed too. Now the railway track has opened out, the hedges are gone. We were on a bit of an embankment as we were coming on the other side of that railway, sorry, the bridge that was there, now the Stanley Bridge, and we've gone into flatter landscape here, although we have got some interesting hills around the outside as well, so very delightful, and even the sun has come out, which is really, really good to see, of course. So what's this curiosity then? Well, it looks like it's a former cattle creep. We've just seen some cattle there, some sheep in the pen, sat right on the former rail bed here on the way to Stanley, which is our next port of call. But yeah, this has been partially filled in now, so you have this bit here which has been filled in. But yes, this is where formerly sheep would have gone underneath the trains going back between Chippenham and Calne. So we've now arrived at Stanley Bridge, and Stanley Bridge was the location of one of two halts on this line. We'll come to the other one later on. So this was the site of Stanley Bridge Halt, and it just had a simple pagoda shelter. Now, before I tell you a little bit more about the halt here, just tell you something about the railway line and how it came to be. Well, it all started off with Brunel, of course, as these things do, building his line between Paddington and Bristol Temple Meads, passing through the important Wiltshire town of Chippenham, which had many mills in the area because of the River Avon. That opened in 1841. Now, a few miles away in the town of Calne, which also had a few mills of its own, they thought that they were missing out on the action. So in 1859, they held a meeting in the town to see, hey, why can't we have one of these new fangled railway things which will boost our trade? And so they had that meeting, but it was not without some problems. They had objections from one James C. Hale, who was the proprietor of the Wilts and Berks Canal, which we'll see a little bit of later on in today's video. He objected to it. However, the Harris Meat Company, yes, that producer of sausages, which closed in Calne in 1981, they had their important factory. They were very, very keen for this railway line to open because it meant that they could transport pigs to their huge slaughterhouse in Calne via the railway, which would save them a lot of money. So they put up 50% of the money to form the Calne Railway Company. The GWR objected and said that the line would never be profitable. Calne was too small a town to have a branch line of its own, and initially in the 19th century that was proved to be the case. So before I tell you more about this fabulous little railway line, GWR, that was later became the GWR line, I'll tell you how that happened too. Just to tell you about how this walk came about today, I'm using, yes, this book again. It's the Lost Railway Walks book, which is the one that my daughter got for me back at Christmas time. That seems a long time ago now. So this is the second one in the series here, and I hope to do more, choosing ones that I can get to that are in the West Country Wanderings area. This book actually covers Wales and Scotland as well, which is way out of my area. But there's a few here which I think you'll find interesting, which we can cover as we go on here on West Country Wanderings, and it described this route in detail, so I thought they'd be fantastic. And of course, thanks to Sustrans, it is in brilliant condition. You have still the original fence posts of the railway alongside it, and the hedges have been cut back, and it's well maintained, and you also have good signage along, so there's no chance of getting lost once you're on it, of course. After this railway bridge, it does an interesting thing. The railway actually continued in a straight direction, but it was head through a farm. I think it's called Stanley Bridge Farm now. There's also a mill the other side there. The River Marden, it's now making its appearance. Well, it will be shortly. It's just over the other side of the bridge, and there's a mill there called Stanley Mill. But our track actually bends round to the right, and we have to join the road for a short section before we can rejoin the railway track heading on to Calne. Now, Stanley Bridge Halt actually opened in 1905. I think this was the position of it. I can't be exactly sure, but there is a widening of the track bed here, and it's just positioned below the bridge. And it was, as I say, a simple pagoda shelter in typical GWR style, and I would imagine it was open to serve the nearby mill, Stanley Mill, which is, as I say, it sits on the River Marden. The halt closed in 1965, as did the rest of the line. I doubt it was ever very well used, but another halt, which we'll see later on, was, which it's a really interesting story. Now, though it's probably hard to make out in the dense undergrowth there, that's the former railway track bed heading there. That's back towards Stanley Bridge, and I've just been walking along the road, country lane that runs parallel to it. I'm now at a location called Studley Bridge, which is really interesting, particularly if you follow my Canal series. So I'm just about to join the rail track again, restored section that Sustrans done, making our way across to Calne. But this location just beyond those gates, it's Studley Bridge itself, and that was a bridge that carried the railway over the Wilts and Berks Canal, but it's completely disused at this point and you can't make it out. Now, an unrestored section of the Wilts and Berks Canal is just down there in the undergrowth. There's very little to see, unfortunately, and you can't get access to see what the bridge, the Canal Bridge, looks like from the portal, if you like. It's a really quiet location here, so I thought we'd continue our story of how this railway opened. Now, before I do that, there's a couple of other interesting things in this area. Just along the line of that hedgerow there, that's where our canal was. And just beyond that, the canal went over an aqueduct, or on an aqueduct should I say, carrying it over the River Marden, which is just over there. And it was the collapse of that aqueduct that led to the demise of the Wilts and Berks Canal. Also in this area you have a former Cistercian abbey. It actually was in this field beyond, and following the railway track, obviously it predates the railway track, but it continued on there round to a farm which I think is called Abbey Farm, so it's a really, really interesting location. Now, the Calne Railway Company decided to do things on the cheap to hasten things up, and they decided to employ a local builder to actually build Calne station itself, and they allotted a sum of £26,000 to build the entire line, which even then was quite cheap. It was a lot of money then, but it was still quite cheap for the construction of an entirely new branch line with the bridges, the embankments and all of the station buildings, and also the link to the main line at Chippenham. On the 15th of May 1860 they got their Act of Parliament to construct the line from Chippenham down to Calne, and they'd actually raised their capital stake to £35,000. Again, a lot of that was to do with the Harris Meat Production Company. However, on the 6th of June 1861 they discovered that there were more works to be built along the line to enable it to open than they had originally anticipated for, and that sum amounted to some £10,000, so there was a further delay before they went back to their shareholders again to raise the sum before construction could start. At the end of 1861 construction started, but a Mr. Lane, who was the chief surveyor for the GWR and was assigned by the government to assess the state of the necessary works on the track, decided that a lot of it was below par and not good enough for the line to open to passengers. Finally, on the 27th of October 1863, the line did open. And a couple of days later, it wasn't a passenger train that opened here, but a goods train delivering, yes, you guessed it, pigs down to Calne and the meat processing works there. The first passenger train ran from Chippenham to Calne just a few days later. Now the track has opened out. We're afforded this view across where the former Cistercian Abbey would have been here at Studley. Great sky as well, but you can see the dips and bumps in the ground there. It looks like an embankment. You've got those trees in the foreground and there's a bank on the other side of it. So that's where the Abbey was here. Now this wonderful stone bridge behind me just links two farms together. Stanley Abbey Farm and Old Abbey Farm. So that's one there, Stanley Abbey Farm, and you have another farm there down by the site of the former Cistercian Abbey here in the northern part of Wiltshire. Now at this point here, the railway enters a wood, although I doubt very much that the wood was there when the railway line was constructed and probably had to cut some of the trees down, or a lot of them I would think, and they've sprung up since this line closed in 1965-66. Fabulous bit of one, it's called Great Bodnage Wood, and we'll continue our journey along to the town of Calne. So just down there we have yet another bridge, and that carries a minor road between the hamlet of Studley and the hamlet of Hill, which lies just in that direction, of which also is both the River Marden and the arm of the Wilts and Berks that once fed the town of Calne too, which predated this branch line. Now this is the first overbridge we've seen so far on our route heading to Calne. The entire length of the branch line is 5 miles, just over 5 miles, 5 miles 26 chains that is. That may or may not be right, I'll put the exact length in below. But this bridge here, obviously all these bridges over and underneath the railway built up the cost, hence why they had all those problems in the initial construction. This one just carries a very minor farm lane which just simply links up two fields. We're now in a beautiful section of this walk following the track, but this is still the track bed of the branch line to Calne. It's lovely, isn't it? This is called Searcher's Wood. We're now about a mile and a half outside of the town itself, and it also has a beautiful entrance because it goes into a park. The name escapes me because I did a vlog there less than 12 months ago now, so we'll head to there next. But that's not all we've got for you on the video. Something really interesting coming up. is Black Dog Halt, opened as a private halt for the Marquis of Lansdowne at nearby Bowood Hall, which is just probably a quarter of a mile from here. Excuse the noise of the A4. Just gone over a footbridge which has been built by Sustrans, which replaced the original railway bridge over the A4, which is of course the main, what was a coach route between London and Bristol. So yes, you have this fabulous sign here now, which is fantastic to see. As I say, it opened privately in the 1870s. In the 1890s, they requested to put a sign here, or rather they requested GWR to do so, but they refused for reasons unknown. But it wasn't until 1952, all the way until then, that this finally opened as an official halt, and it then appeared in railway timetables. Interesting spot here, just up from where the halt sign is, because you've got remains of the buildings here. There's also what looks like a lead tank, not sure what that was for, and remains of an outline of the building. Perhaps it was a plate layer hut in this area, not too sure, but I'll show you. Now curiously, on the opposite side of the track you have this low wall too. I don't know what that was for. Perhaps it was for a loading dock. If I can find out any more information or see it on a map, I'll insert that roundabout now. But yes, it's a really interesting sight, apart from the noise from the A4, of course. Well, I've been thoroughly enjoying this walk, and I excuse the awful lighting at the moment because the sun's everywhere I go. It's just completely in the wrong place, but I mustn't complain because it's good to see the sun. We have got forecast some rain over the next 6 days, so I'll be editing this one and a couple of other videos as well until the rain stays off again. But yeah, it's a lovely route from the town of Chippenham to the town of Calne. We'll be entering the town soon. And the river Marden is just over down there, and it's a delightful place. Unfortunately, it has been quite busy filming here today because it's been Mothering Sunday and there's lots of families been out for a walk, and also probably looking at the weather forecast thinking that's the last chance we've got for walk for a while. So I don't blame them for taking advantage of that, but it has been a little bit tricky from that respect. But apart from that, I've really enjoyed it. It's a very flat level walk. I'd say it's just a little over either 5.5 miles, depending which way you come out of Chippenham. And I'll try to put a link in the description of the walk today, but it is quite easy to follow. You don't need there's no turning left, right here over stars, nothing like that. There's no stars on the route at all. Now this part of the walk, the footpath has actually dropped down a gradient. The track runs across there, but it's now been partially built over, or landscaped over should I say, to build those new houses at the top there, so you can't actually follow the original line of the route into the town of Calne, which is a bit of a shame, but I think we link up a bit again near the former railway station site. Now, profits on this line in 1864 was a mere £53 for an entire half of a year. But by 1869, things had run into great difficulty with the finance on this line, and the line was in trouble with paying its debtors. In 1874, the line was converted from broad gauge as it was built to an ordinary standard gauge track, and that work was carried out by GWR at no cost to them, because obviously they needed that because of the junction at Chippenham. On 29th of December 1877, the directors of the Canal branch railway were in negotiations with the GWR for them to buy the railway, because they could no longer afford to run it for themselves. And the GWR bought the line, obviously with the debts as well. They didn't pay much for it because it was loss making, but they thought they could turn it around. In the 20th century, the financial fortunes of the line increased dramatically. Freight increased on the line after the First World War, and the build up to the Second World War, because of the three main RAF stations. I'll list them in below. I think one of them is of course Lyneham, and there were two others. There was lots of troop movements on the line, and that all helped to boost trade for the new owners, the GWR. Now, towards the end of the 1950s, road traffic increased and the use of the railway line decreased, and it's a familiar story of course. And the final passenger train ran on the 18th of September 1965, and the track sadly was lifted in 1967. Perhaps if they just mothballed it and started blowing up bridges and ripping up track, it may have been reopened again to serve this lovely town here in Wiltshire and taken traffic off our ever congested roads. And so, with the River Marden behind me here in the town of Calne in the county of Wiltshire, that's it for today. Here on West Country Wanderings, that's the end of part 2 of Lost Railway Walks. The first one I did initially wasn't that popular, but it got increasingly popular as the weeks went on. So that's why I've decided to do another one. And almost certainly there's going to be a part 3 from that book in the West Country Wanderings area. And as I say, hopefully I'll be able to drop in a link in of today's walk, but it is pretty straightforward route, most delightful route too. I'm sure you enjoy it. If you want to come in to catch a train into Chippenham, it's much easier than trying to park a car, all that traffic on the M4 and all that stuff. And say walk here, and then you can catch the bus, which is what I'm going to do next. Even though it's a Sunday, I've been assured bus number 22, which runs between Swindon and Chippenham via Calne, runs every 30 minutes on a Sunday, and even more frequent than that during the week, so it's easy to get back to the railway station again. Hope you enjoyed it today. If you did, love to hear from me. Please drop a comment below. Take care of yourselves, look after yourselves, and I hope to see you on the channel again very, very soon. All the best for now. Cheers. Goodbye.